The desert wind carries sand across the Giza plateau, grain by grain, century by century, slowly reshaping what time has left behind. Three massive structures rise from the earth here, so perfectly aligned that even modern engineers pause in wonder. The Great Pyramid of Khufu stands tallest, flanked by the pyramids of Khafre and Menkaure, their limestone faces catching the last light of day. For more than 4,000 years, they have stood here, silent witnesses to the passage of empires, the birth and death of civilizations, the endless turning of the heavens above. But these monuments hold a secret that has troubled scholars and stargazers for generations. The three pyramids are not randomly placed. They align with precision that seems impossible for people who lived before computers, before telescopes, before any of the mathematical tools we take for granted today. Their arrangement mirrors something far above the desert floor, something that turns in the night sky with perfect regularity. The three pyramids of Giza align almost exactly with the three stars of Orion's belt. This alignment raises questions that echo through time. How did ancient builders achieve such precision? What drove them to mirror the heavens on Earth? Was it religious devotion, astronomical knowledge, mathematical genius, or something else entirely? And perhaps most intriguing of all, what did they believe would happen when stone and star came into perfect correspondence? The story of the pyramids and the stars is not just about ancient engineering or religious belief. It is about humanity's oldest obsession, the need to connect Earth with sky, the mortal with the eternal, the temporary with the permanent. It is a story that begins not with construction, but with observation, with people who looked up at the night sky and saw not random points of light, but patterns, meanings, destinies written in the movement of the stars. Long before the first stone was laid at Giza, the people of the Nile Valley were watching the sky. They had to. Their survival depended on understanding celestial patterns. The annual flooding of the Nile, which brought fertile silt to renew the fields, came with predictable regularity, announced by the heliacal rising of the star Sirius. This was the moment when Sirius first became visible on the eastern horizon just before sunrise, after a period of invisibility. When Sirius appeared, the flood was coming. The fields would be covered with water and mud, and when the waters receded, planting could begin. This connection between sky and earth was not abstract to the ancient Egyptians. It was practical, essential, a matter of life and death. The stars told them when to prepare, when to plant, when to harvest. The sky was a calendar more reliable than anything written on papyrus, a clock that never stopped, a guide that never failed. And so they watched, night after night, generation after generation, learning the patterns, memorizing the movements, understanding that the heavens followed rules even if those rules were beyond human power to change. But observation led to something deeper than practical knowledge. The Egyptians began to see meaning in the patterns. The stars were not just markers of time. They were divine beings, gods traveling across the night sky, enacting cosmic dramas that reflected the order of creation itself. The sky became a map of the afterlife, a realm where souls journeyed after death, where the pharaohs would live forever among the imperishable stars. This is where Orion enters the story. In Egyptian mythology, this constellation was associated with Osiris, the god of death and resurrection, the judge of souls, the ruler of the underworld. Osiris was one of the most important deities in the Egyptian pantheon, a god who had died and been reborn, who promised eternal life to those who followed the proper rituals and lived according to divine law. His connection with Orion linked the sky with the promise of immortality, the stars with the hope of eternal existence. The three stars of Orion's belt were particularly significant. They were prominent, easy to identify, perfect in their alignment. They appeared to the Egyptians as a celestial reflection of divine order, 3 points of light arranged with geometric perfection. And when the pharaohs of the Fourth Dynasty decided to build monuments that would last forever, monuments that would ensure their own resurrection and eternal life, they looked to these stars for guidance. The decision to build the Giza pyramids came during a period of extraordinary confidence in Egyptian civilization. This was the Old Kingdom, specifically the Fourth Dynasty, roughly 2600 to 2500 BCE. Egypt was unified, wealthy, powerful. The Nile flooded reliably. Trade networks extended across the known world. The pharaohs commanded resources and labor that seemed staggering even by modern standards, and they were obsessed with immortality, with ensuring that their souls would survive death and live forever among the gods. Previous pharaohs had built monuments, certainly. The step pyramid at Saqqara, built for Pharaoh Djoser about a century earlier, had been a breakthrough, the first large-scale stone structure in human history. But Khufu, who came to power around 2580 BCE, had something different in mind. He wanted a pyramid smooth-sided, perfectly proportioned, aligned with cosmic precision. He wanted a structure that would not just honor the gods, but embody divine order, that would link earth with heaven through its very geometry. The location chosen was the Giza Plateau, a limestone outcrop on the west bank of the Nile, near the capital city of Memphis. The west was significant in Egyptian religion. The sun set in the west, dying each evening and being reborn each dawn. The west was the land of the dead, the direction souls traveled to reach the afterlife. Building a royal tomb on the western bank of the Nile was traditional, but Giza offered something more. It was a natural plateau, elevated above the floodplain, solid bedrock that could support immense weight, and it had clear sight lines to the night sky, unobstructed views of the stars that would guide the pharaoh's soul to immortality. The planning of the Great Pyramid required knowledge that we often underestimate in ancient peoples. The builders needed to understand geometry, to calculate volumes and weights, to determine the precise angle of the pyramid's slopes. They needed to orient the structure with extraordinary accuracy, aligning its sides with the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. And they needed to coordinate the labor of thousands of workers over decades of construction, organizing logistics that would challenge modern project managers. But beyond these practical considerations was something more profound. The pyramid was not just a tomb, it was a machine for resurrection, a stone vehicle that would carry the pharaoh's soul to the stars. Every detail of its design served this purpose. The shafts that extended from the burial chamber were not ventilation, as early archaeologists assumed. They were star shafts, aligned with specific points in the night sky, creating pathways for the pharaoh's soul to travel to the constellations where he would live forever. The northern shaft from the king's chamber pointed toward the circumpolar stars, the stars that never set, that circled the celestial pole night after night, year after year, century after century. These were the imperishable stars, eternally present in the Egyptian sky. Connecting the pharaoh's tomb to these stars was a way of ensuring his eternal existence. He would become imperishable, always present, never fading into the darkness of true death. The southern shaft pointed toward Orion's Belt, toward the constellation of Osiris, toward the realm where the god of resurrection dwelled. This was the pathway the pharaoh's soul would take to join Osiris, to be judged, to be transformed, to take his place among the divine beings who govern the cosmos. The shaft was not metaphorical. In Egyptian belief, it was a real channel, a passageway carved through stone that the soul could travel as it ascended to the stars. This attention to stellar alignment was not limited to the shafts. The entire pyramid complex was oriented with the precision we associate with observatories, not tombs. The base of the Great Pyramid is almost perfectly square, with sides measuring approximately 230 meters each, differing from perfect equality by only a few centimeters. The sides align with the cardinal directions with an accuracy that varies by only a tiny fraction of a degree. Achieving this precision required astronomical observation, careful measurement, and an understanding of geometry that took generations to develop. But how did they do it? Without telescopes, without precision instruments, without computers, how did ancient engineers achieve alignment that modern surveyors find difficult to match? The answer lies in patient observation and clever technique. The Egyptians used the stars themselves as their instruments. They watched the movement of circumpolar stars across the night sky, marking their positions relative to a plumb line or a carefully leveled surface. By observing stars as they rose and set, by tracking their paths across the sky, by noting their positions relative to the horizon, Egyptian astronomers could determine true north with remarkable accuracy. One method involved observing a star as it rose in the east, marking its position, then observing the same star as it set in the west, marking that position as well. The midpoint between these two positions gave a line running true east to west. A perpendicular line from this would point true north. It required patience, clear skies, and meticulous care, but it worked. And the Egyptians had all the time they needed. The pyramid projects took decades. There was no rush. Precision was more important than speed. Another method involved the circumpolar stars, those that never dipped below the horizon. By observing these stars over the course of a night, Egyptian astronomers could locate the celestial North Pole, the point around which all the stars appeared to rotate. Aligning a structure with this celestial pole gave true north, unchanging and permanent. The techniques required no advanced technology, just knowledge, patience, and commitment to accuracy. But the alignment of the Great Pyramid was only the beginning. When Khufu's son, Khafre, built his pyramid next to his father's, and when Menkaure later added a third, smaller pyramid, the arrangement of these three structures created a pattern that mirrored the sky. The three pyramids of Giza align almost exactly with the three stars of Orion's belt, the same slight deviation from perfect linearity, the same relative sizes, with the northernmost being largest and the southernmost being smallest. This correspondence has fascinated researchers for generations. In 1983, Robert Bouval, a Belgian construction engineer with a deep interest in ancient Egypt, proposed what he called the Orion correlation theory. He argued that the layout of the Giza pyramids was deliberately designed to mirror Orion's belt, and that other pyramids in the Memphis area corresponded to other stars in Orion and surrounding constellations. The entire necropolis, according to this theory, was a terrestrial map of a section of the night sky, a way of bringing the celestial realm to Earth. The theory is compelling because the correspondence is so striking. The three stars of Orion's belt, Al-Nitak, Al-Nilam, and Mintaka, are arranged in a line, but not a perfectly straight line. The third star is offset slightly from the line formed by the first two. The three pyramids of Giza show the same pattern. Khufu's pyramid and Khafre's pyramid form a diagonal line running southwest to northeast. Menkaure's pyramid is offset from this line, displaced to the east, just as Mintaka is offset from the line of the other two belt stars. Moreover, the sizes of the pyramids roughly correspond to the brightness of the stars. Al-Nitak, the brightest star in the belt, corresponds to Khufu's pyramid, the largest structure. Al-Nilam, slightly dimmer, corresponds to Khafre's pyramid, which is slightly smaller. Mintaka, the dimmest of the three belt stars, corresponds to Menkaure's pyramid, significantly smaller than the other two. The pattern is not perfect. The pyramid size ratios do not exactly match the stars' brightness ratios, but the correspondence is close enough to seem intentional. If this correlation is real, if the ancient Egyptians deliberately arranged the pyramids to mirror Orion's belt, then we must ask what they hoped to achieve by doing so. The answer lies in Egyptian beliefs about the afterlife and the role of the pharaoh in cosmic order. The pharaoh was not just a political ruler, he was a living god, the intermediary between the human and divine realms, the one who maintained Ma'at, the cosmic order that kept chaos at bay. When he died, his transformation into a fully divine being was essential not just for his own immortality, but for the continued functioning of the universe itself. By creating a terrestrial reflection of the celestial realm, the pyramids provided a physical link between earth and sky, between the human world and the divine realm, where the pharaohs would dwell after death. The pyramids were not just tombs, they were gateways, bridges, anchors connecting two realms of existence. When a pharaoh died and his body was placed within the pyramid, his soul could travel up through the star shafts, ascending to the constellation that his pyramid mirrored on Earth. The alignment was magical in the Egyptian sense, a way of making sure the connection between Earth and heaven remained open and functional. This idea resonates with a broader pattern in Egyptian religion. The Egyptians saw correspondences everywhere, links between different levels of reality. The Nile was an earthly reflection of a celestial river. The pharaoh was a living embodiment of the god Horus. Temples were models of the cosmos in miniature. Every element of Egyptian religion and culture participated in this web of correspondences. This understanding that the visible world reflected invisible truths, that earthly structures could embody divine patterns. But we must also consider alternative explanations and complications. Not all scholars accept the Orion correlation theory. Some point out that the alignment between pyramids and stars, while striking, is not perfect. The offset of Menkaura's pyramid is somewhat greater than the offset of Mintaka. The orientations do not match exactly. If the builders were trying to create a precise mirror of Orion's belt, why did they not do so with absolute accuracy? They clearly had the skill and knowledge to achieve better alignment if that was their goal. Critics also note that the correlation depends on viewing Orion's belt from a specific perspective and at a specific time. The stars move across the sky over the course of the night. Their positions relative to the horizon change with the seasons. Over very long periods, their positions relative to each other shift slightly due to the slow wobble of Earth's axis, a phenomenon called precession. Which specific moment and perspective should we use when comparing the pyramids to the stars? Different choices give slightly different results. Moreover, the pyramids were built over several generations. Khufu's pyramid was completed around 2560 BCE. Khafre's was built perhaps 20 years later. Menkaura's came last, possibly another 20 or 30 years after that. If the three pyramids were meant to be seen as a unified representation of Orion's belt, why were they built sequentially rather than according to a master plan? Did each pharaoh independently decide to position his pyramid to continue the pattern, or did later pharaohs inherit a design concept from earlier ones? These questions do not disprove the correlation, but they complicate it. The relationship between the pyramids and Orion's belt may be real, but not as simple as it first appears. Perhaps the alignment was intentional but approximate, capturing the general pattern rather than achieving mathematical perfection. Perhaps it evolved over time as successive pharaohs built on what came before, maintaining a tradition without necessarily understanding all of its original meaning. Perhaps it was a combination of deliberate design and fortunate accident, where conscious choices about orientation and placement happened to produce a pattern that reflected deeper cultural beliefs about stars and the afterlife. What we can say with confidence is that the ancient Egyptians were obsessed with the stars, that they connected celestial patterns with religious beliefs about death and resurrection, and that they built structures oriented with extraordinary astronomical precision. Whether the specific correspondence between Giza pyramids and Orion's belt was fully intentional or partly coincidental, it reflects a worldview in which Earth and sky were intimately connected, in which human monuments participated in cosmic patterns, in which the boundary between physical and spiritual realms was permeable. The Egyptian priests and astronomers who observed the night sky were doing something more than measuring time or predicting the Nile's flood. They were reading the will of the gods, understanding the structure of reality, learning the paths that souls would travel after death. The sky was not just a physical space above the earth. It was the dwelling place of divine beings, the destination of transformed souls, the blueprint for creation itself. Every night, as the stars wheeled across the darkness, they were watching sacred drama unfold, gods traveling their appointed paths, cosmic order maintaining itself against the forces of chaos. Orion rose in the eastern sky during the Egyptian winter, appearing after sunset in November and remaining visible through the night until spring. The constellation's rising marked the beginning of the growing season, when the fields, renewed by the Nile's flood, could be planted with crops. This association with agricultural renewal reinforced Orion's connection with Osiris, the god of death and resurrection. Just as Osiris died and was reborn, just as seeds were buried in the earth and sprouted into new life, just as the land was covered with floodwater and then emerged renewed, so too would the pharaoh die physically but be reborn spiritually, ascending to live forever among the stars. The pyramid texts, some of the oldest religious writings in human history, carved into the walls of 5th and 6th dynasty pyramids, make this connection explicit. They describe the dead pharaoh ascending to the sky, becoming a star, joining Osiris in the constellation. The texts use vivid imagery of climbing, flying, being carried upward by celestial ferrymen. They speak of the pharaoh taking his place among the imperishable stars, becoming one of the divine beings who govern the cosmos. These were not metaphors in our modern sense. They were descriptions of what Egyptians believed actually happened to the pharaoh's soul after death. One passage describes the pharaoh ascending on a ladder to reach the sky. Another speaks of him flying as a bird. Another describes him being carried across the celestial waters in a boat. The variety of images suggests that the journey was understood in multiple ways. that different metaphors captured different aspects of the transformation from mortal to immortal, from earthly king to celestial god. But all the images agree on the destination, the stars, specifically the region of the sky where Orion rises, where Osiris dwells, where eternal life awaits. The star shafts in the Great Pyramid may have been physical embodiments of these textual descriptions. If the texts speak of ascending to the stars, the shafts provide a literal pathway for that ascent. If the texts describe the soul traveling to Orion, the southern shaft pointing toward Orion's belt creates an alignment that makes that journey possible. The pyramid is not just a symbol of these beliefs, it is a mechanism for realizing them. Architecture as ritual technology, stone-shaped to serve spiritual purposes. But building such a mechanism required extraordinary effort. The Great Pyramid contains approximately 2.3 million blocks of stone, each weighing on average about 2.5 tons, with some weighing much more. Moving these blocks from quarries to the construction site, lifting them into place, fitting them together with minimal gaps, maintaining alignment and proportions throughout the decades of construction, all of this demanded organization, skill, and commitment on a scale that is difficult for us to fully comprehend. Recent scholarship has complicated our understanding of how this work was accomplished. The old image of slaves dragging blocks up external ramps under the whips of cruel overseers has been largely abandoned. Evidence suggests that the pyramid builders were not slaves, but skilled workers, possibly seasonal laborers who worked on the pyramids during the flood season when agricultural work was impossible. They were paid in food and beer, housed in workers' villages, provided with medical care when injured. They were participating in a sacred project, building a structure that would ensure cosmic order, protect Egypt, and guarantee the pharaoh's resurrection. This was not forced labor. It was religious service, civic duty, participation in something greater than individual lives. The logistics of the project were staggering. Workers needed to be fed, housed, organized. Stone had to be quarried, transported, and shaped. Tools had to be manufactured and maintained. Ramps or lifting devices had to be constructed to raise blocks dozens of meters above ground. Water channels may have been used to float stones closer to the construction site. Copper tools, relatively soft by modern standards, had to be constantly sharpened or replaced. And throughout all of this, the astronomical alignment had to be maintained, the precision never lost, the connection between earth and sky preserved in stone. The construction itself may have incorporated astronomical observations. Some researchers suggest that the pyramid sides were aligned by building platforms at the corners, waiting for specific stars to rise or set, and using the star's position to determine the proper orientation. Others propose that the pyramid's height and base dimensions encode astronomical constants, mathematical relationships that reflect the builder's understanding of celestial geometry. The pyramid's height multiplied by a specific ratio gives the circumference of its base, a relationship similar to the mathematical constant pi, though whether this was intentional or coincidental remains debated. What is clear is that every aspect of the pyramid's design was meaningful. The smooth limestone casing that originally covered the entire structure, now largely removed, but once brilliantly white and polished, made the pyramid shine in the sunlight, visible for miles across the desert. At night, under moonlight, it would have glowed, a beacon linking earth and sky. The entrance on the northern face, the internal chambers and passages, the sarcophagus carved from solid granite. Every element served the purpose of facilitating the pharaoh's transformation and ascent to the stars. When Khafre built his pyramid next to his father's, he maintained the pattern. His pyramid is slightly smaller but appears taller because it sits on higher ground. It retains some of its original limestone casing at the top, giving us a glimpse of how all three pyramids once appeared. The alignment with Khufu's pyramid is precise, maintaining the diagonal that would eventually correspond to two of Orion's belt stars. Whether Khafre understood this correspondence or simply followed architectural traditions established by his father, he perpetuated a pattern that linked earth with sky. Menkaur's pyramid, significantly smaller than the other two, completes the pattern. Its offset position mirrors Mintaka's offset from the line of the other two belt stars. The size difference matches the brightness difference, at least approximately. Whether this was fully intentional or whether it reflects the declining resources available to later 4th Dynasty pharaohs is uncertain. What matters is that the pattern exists, that three pyramids mirror three stars, that terrestrial architecture reflects celestial arrangement. But the pyramids do not exist in isolation. They are surrounded by smaller pyramids, mastaba tombs of nobles and officials, causeways connecting pyramid complexes to valley temples, sphinx statues, and other structures. The entire Giza necropolis is a landscape of monuments, each element playing a role in the religious drama of death and resurrection. The Sphinx, with its lion body and human head, guards the approach to Khafre's pyramid, facing east toward the rising sun. Some researchers connect it with Leo, the constellation, suggesting another stellar correspondence, though this connection is more speculative than the Orion correlation. The valley temples, where bodies were prepared before being taken up the causeway to the pyramid for burial, were architectural marvels in themselves. Massive granite pillars supported heavy roofs. Alabaster floors reflected light. Water basins served ritual purposes. These were not simple buildings. They were sophisticated structures designed to facilitate the complex rituals required to transform a dead pharaoh into a living god. The body had to be mummified, preserved so that the soul would have a physical form to return to. Spells had to be recited, offerings made, ceremonies performed. All of this happened in the Valley Temple before the body made its final journey up the causeway to the pyramid itself. The causeway, a covered corridor ascending from the Valley Temple to the pyramid complex, symbolized the path from the land of the living to the realm of the dead. Walking this path, the funeral procession moved from the green, fertile Nile Valley to the red, barren desert plateau, from life to death, from earth to sky, from the temporary to the eternal. The causeway itself was aligned carefully, not just with the pyramid, but with celestial directions, ensuring that every step of the funeral journey maintained cosmic orientation. Inside the Great Pyramid, the ascending and descending passages create a three-dimensional geometry that may encode astronomical and mathematical knowledge. The ascending passage rises at an angle of approximately 26 degrees, roughly matching the latitude of Giza. The Grand Gallery, a remarkable corbelled passage rising to the King's Chamber, has been described as one of the great architectural achievements of the ancient world. Its purpose remains mysterious, but its presence suggests that the pyramid's interior was not just functional, but symbolic, that the journey through the pyramid reflected the soul's journey to the stars. The King's Chamber itself, a rectangular room lined with red granite, contains the sarcophagus where Khufu's body would have rested. The chamber's dimensions follow mathematical ratios that some researchers believe encode astronomical knowledge. The shafts extending from this chamber, precisely angled, pointed toward specific stars or stellar regions significant in Egyptian religion. The northern shaft aimed at the circumpolar stars, the imperishable ones. The southern shaft pointed toward Orion's Belt, toward Osiris. These were not random choices. They were carefully calculated alignments that took years of observation to determine and extraordinary engineering skill to achieve. The precision of these shafts is remarkable. They are only about 20 centimeters square, yet they maintain their angle and direction over many meters of solid stone, emerging on the pyramid's exterior exactly where they should. Creating such shafts required planning the pyramid's internal structure in advance, knowing where each shaft would enter and exit, maintaining alignment as thousands of stone blocks were stacked around and over them. Any error would have resulted in shafts that missed their targets, that emerged in the wrong location, or failed to emerge at all. Yet the shafts work perfectly, testament to the builder's skill and knowledge. But why shafts at all? Why not simply build the burial chamber higher in the pyramid, closer to the sky? The answer may lie in Egyptian beliefs about the soul's journey. The pharaoh's spirit needed a path, a channel through which to travel. The shafts provided this path, creating a direct connection between the burial chamber and the stars. They transformed the pyramid from a solid mass of stone into a functioning mechanism, architecture that served spiritual purposes through its physical design. The alignment of the Giza pyramids with Orion's Belt becomes more intriguing when we consider the timing. Around 2500 BCE, when the pyramids were being built, Orion's Belt was rising above the southeastern horizon at a specific angle. Using computer programs that can recreate ancient night skies, researchers have determined that the pyramid's arrangement mirrors how Orion's Belt would have appeared at a particular moment, possibly the moment of Heliacal rising, when the stars first became visible before dawn after a period of invisibility. This heliacal rising was significant in Egyptian astronomy. Just as the heliacal rising of Sirius announced the Nile flood, the heliacal rising of Orion announced the growing season. The connection between the sky event and the earthly event, between stellar appearance and agricultural activity, reinforced the Egyptian understanding that heaven and earth were linked, that observing the stars allowed humans to participate in cosmic order. If the pyramids were positioned to reflect Orion's belt at this specific moment of heliacal rising, then they capture not just the constellation's pattern, but a specific point in its annual cycle. They freeze a moment of transition, when the stars emerge from the solar, glare into visibility, when winter begins to give way to spring, when death gives way to the promise of resurrection. The pyramids become not just mirrors of the stars, but monuments to the moment of rebirth, to the hope that death is not an ending, but a transformation. This understanding adds depth to the pyramids' meaning. They are not static monuments. They are dynamic symbols, capturing motion and transformation, the movement of stars across the sky, the journey of the soul from death to eternal life, the cycle of seasons from flood to planting to harvest. The stone itself may be permanent, may endure for millennia, but what it represents is change, process, the perpetual movement of the cosmos through which death is overcome and life is renewed. Yet, we must acknowledge the limitations of our knowledge. Much about the pyramids remains mysterious. How exactly were they built? What tools and techniques were used? How many people worked on them? How long did construction actually take? We have theories and evidence, but certainty eludes us. The ancient Egyptians did not leave detailed construction manuals. They recorded religious texts and historical events, but the practical knowledge of how to build a pyramid was apparently passed down through demonstration and apprenticeship, not through written instruction. Moreover, the religious beliefs that motivated the pyramid's construction are not fully accessible to us. We have texts, but texts are always incomplete, always assuming knowledge that the original audience possessed, but that we must painstakingly reconstruct. The pyramid texts give us insight into Egyptian beliefs about the afterlife, but they are cryptic, formulaic, full of references to myths and rituals that we understand only partially. Modern scholars can translate the words, but translation is not the same as understanding. The full significance of what the pyramids meant to their builders may be beyond our recovery. The Orion correlation theory itself, while compelling, remains controversial. Some Egyptologists accept it as a reasonable interpretation of the evidence. Others reject it as reading too much into coincidental alignments. The debate continues, with new evidence and new analyses regularly emerging. What seems clear is that the pyramids have stellar alignments, that Orion was important in Egyptian religion, and that some connection between the pyramids and the stars exists. The exact nature and extent of that connection, however, remains open to interpretation. Part of the difficulty lies in the nature of ancient astronomy itself. The Egyptians did not write textbooks explaining their astronomical knowledge. They recorded observations, made calculations, applied this knowledge to religious and practical purposes, but they did not systematize it in ways that would allow later generations to fully understand their methods. We know they could predict the Nile flood. We know they could orient massive structures with extraordinary precision. We know they associated specific stars with specific gods. But the underlying theories, the astronomical models they used, the calculations they performed, most of this is lost. What we have are the monuments themselves, silent testimony to knowledge and skill that we struggle to fully comprehend. The pyramids stand as they have stood for 4 millennia, precisely aligned, perfectly proportioned, mysterious in their purpose, and profound in their achievement. They are evidence that ancient peoples were not primitive, not lacking in intelligence or sophistication, but different from us, operating with different assumptions, different goals, different ways of understanding the world and humanity's place within it. The Egyptian worldview saw the universe as ordered, as following patterns established at creation, as governed by divine forces that maintained cosmic stability against the ever-present threat of chaos. Human beings participated in this order through ritual, through building, through observing and honoring the patterns that connected different levels of reality. The pharaoh stood at the center of this system, the living link between gods and humans, the one responsible for maintaining Ma'at, for ensuring that the sun rose each day, that the Nile flooded each year, that the stars followed their proper courses. When a pharaoh died, the cosmic order was threatened. The link between divine and human realms was broken. But through proper burial, through the correct rituals, through the right architectural forms, the pharaoh could be transformed into a god himself, could ascend to the stars, could take his place among the imperishable ones who maintained the universe. The pyramid was the mechanism for this transformation, the technology of immortality, stone shaped to serve eternal purposes. This is why the alignment mattered so much. It was not decoration, it was not symbolism in any superficial sense. It was essential functionality. If the pyramid was not properly aligned with the stars, if the shafts did not point in the right directions, if the correspondence between earth and sky was not maintained, then the mechanism would not work. The pharaoh's soul might not be able to ascend, the transformation might fail, cosmic order might collapse. We, with our modern understanding of the universe, know that the stars are not gods, that building a pyramid does not actually create a pathway to another realm, that alignment with Orion's belt does not ensure immortality. But this knowledge does not diminish what the ancient Egyptians achieved. They took their beliefs seriously and built accordingly. They applied extraordinary skill and knowledge to create monuments that embodied their deepest convictions about death, the soul, and the structure of reality. And in doing so, they created something that endures, that speaks to us across millennia, that raises questions we still struggle to answer. The pyramids invite us to consider what truly matters in human life. The pharaohs who built them wanted to live forever, wanted to transcend death, wanted to join the gods in the eternal realm. They invested unimaginable resources in pursuing this goal, and while they did not achieve literal immortality, they achieved something else. Their names are still known. Their monuments still stand. Their vision, their beliefs, their achievements continue to inspire awe and wonder. Perhaps this is its own kind of immortality, not the literal survival of the soul in a celestial realm, but the survival of memory, of influence, of presence in human consciousness long after the physical body has turned to dust. The stars that the pyramids align with continue their eternal dance across the night sky. Orion rises each winter, its belt stars marching across the darkness in the same pattern they have followed for thousands of years. The pyramids stand beneath those stars, stone answering to light, earth echoing heaven, human achievement reaching toward divine permanence. The alignment remains, the correspondence endures. The message encoded in stone and star continues to speak to anyone who has eyes to see and imagination to understand. On certain nights, when the sky is clear and the moon has not yet risen, you can stand on the Giza plateau and look up at Orion's belt. The three stars shine with steady light, arranged in their slightly offset line, eternal and unchanging. Then you can look down at the three pyramids, massive presences even in darkness, their forms barely visible against the night sky. And in that moment, you can see what the ancient Egyptians saw, the correspondence between sky and earth, the reflection of divine pattern in human construction, the link between mortal and immortal that the pyramids were built to create. The wind continues to blow across the desert. Sand accumulates and erodes. Centuries pass. Civilizations rise and fall. The stars wheel overhead, following paths they have followed since before humans existed to observe them. And the pyramids stand, patient and mysterious, keeping their secrets, maintaining their alignment, continuing to pose questions that we may never fully answer. Did the ancient Egyptians deliberately arrange the Giza pyramids to mirror Orion's belt? The evidence suggests they did, that this alignment was intentional, that it served religious purposes central to their beliefs about death and immortality. But the full significance of this alignment, the complete understanding of what it meant to its builders, remains elusive, hidden behind the gap of millennia and the silence of stones. What we can know is that human beings 4,000 years ago possessed knowledge and skill that commands respect, that they observed the heavens with care and precision, that they connected what they observed with their deepest beliefs about meaning and purpose, and that they built monuments encoding these connections, creating architecture that embodied their understanding of the cosmos. The pyramids are evidence of this achievement, testimony to the power of human intelligence and dedication, monuments to the eternal human desire to connect earth with sky, the mortal with the divine, the temporary with the permanent. The alignment of the pyramids with the stars is not just an archaeological curiosity, it is a reminder that ancient peoples saw the universe differently than we do, that they found meaning and pattern where we see only physics and chemistry, that they built with purposes we struggle to fully grasp. It challenges us to look beyond our modern assumptions, to imagine different ways of understanding our place in the cosmos, to respect the intelligence and sophistication of peoples who lived and died millennia before we were born. The pyramids will stand for many more centuries, perhaps many more millennia. They have survived longer than most human creations, have outlasted the civilization that built them, have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the birth and death of religions, the transformation of the entire human world. And through all of this, they have maintained their alignment with the stars, their orientation toward the cardinal directions, their silent witness to the connection between earth and heaven that their builders believed was essential to the survival of the soul and the maintenance of cosmic order. The limestone that once covered the pyramids, bright and smooth, reflecting sunlight like mirrors, has mostly been stripped away over centuries. Medieval builders in Cairo needed stone, and the pyramids provided an inexhaustible supply. They peeled away the casing, revealing the rough core blocks we see today. But even in their diminished state, even without their shining exteriors, the pyramids retain their power. Their sheer size overwhelms, their precision astounds, their mystery endures. Modern technology allows us to study the pyramids in ways the ancient Egyptians never imagined. We can use lasers to measure their dimensions with millimeter accuracy. We can employ ground-penetrating radar to search for hidden chambers. We can analyze the chemical composition of the stones to determine which quarries they came from. We can use computer simulations to recreate the ancient night sky and verify stellar alignments. All of this technology, all of this knowledge helps us understand the pyramids better, but it does not fully explain them, because the pyramids are not just physical objects. They are embodiments of belief, manifestations of worldview, expressions of a culture's deepest values and aspirations. To understand them fully, we would need to think as ancient Egyptians thought, to see the universe as they saw it, to feel the same urgency about death and immortality that drove them to invest so much in these monuments. This is impossible. We can study, we can analyze, we can theorize, but we cannot truly think as they thought. The gap of time and culture is too great, yet something reaches across that gap. Standing before the pyramids, feeling their presence, contemplating the effort that went into their construction, thinking about the people who built them and the beliefs that motivated them, we connect with something fundamental in human nature, the desire to create something lasting, the hope that death is not the end, the need to find meaning in the movement of stars and the passage of time. These are not uniquely Egyptian concerns. They are human concerns, as relevant today as they were 4,000 years ago. The pyramid complexes at Giza were not isolated monuments. They were part of a larger landscape of sacred architecture extending along the Nile. Other pyramids, built before and after those at Giza, dotted the desert edge. Each represented a pharaoh's attempt to ensure his immortality, each oriented with astronomical precision, each embodying beliefs about the soul's journey after death. The Giza pyramids are the most famous, the largest, the most perfectly executed, but they are part of a tradition that spans centuries. This tradition began with the Step Pyramid at Saqqara, built for Pharaoh Djoser around 2650 BCE. The architect Imhotep, later deified for his achievement, created the first large stone structure in history by stacking 6 progressively smaller mastabas on top of each other. The Step Pyramid was not just an architectural innovation, it was a theological statement. The steps provided a stairway for the pharaoh's soul to ascend to the sky. The structure itself was a ladder between earth and heaven. Later pharaohs experimented with different designs. The bent pyramid at Dashur, built for Sneferu, Khufu's father, changes angle partway up, probably because the original angle proved too steep and threatened structural integrity. The red pyramid, also built for Sneferu, achieves the true pyramid form, smooth-sided and geometrically pure. These experiments show the evolution of pyramid design, the trial and error that led to the perfection achieved at Giza. But through all these variations, the underlying purpose remained constant: The pyramid was a resurrection machine, a structure that would facilitate the pharaoh's transformation from mortal king to immortal god. And central to this transformation was the connection with the stars, the alignment with celestial patterns, the mirroring of heaven on earth. Every pyramid, regardless of its specific design, was oriented toward the stars, linked through its geometry and alignment to the cosmic patterns that governed existence. The priests who supervised the religious aspects of pyramid construction were also astronomers. They observed the night sky from rooftops and elevated platforms. They tracked the movements of stars and planets over years and decades. They developed calendars based on celestial cycles. They calculated the timing of religious festivals according to stellar positions. This knowledge was not separate from religion. It was religion. Understanding the heavens meant understanding the will of the gods, the structure of creation, the paths that souls would follow after death. The instruments these astronomer priests used were simple by modern standards. A merket, essentially a plumb line with a sighting tool, allowed precise observation of stellar positions. A bay, a straight bar with a V-shaped notch, worked with the merket to establish sight lines for astronomical observations. Water-filled trenches created artificial horizons, against which star positions could be measured. These tools required no advanced technology, but in skilled hands, they produced results of remarkable accuracy. The observations themselves required patience and dedication. To determine true north with precision required watching stars over entire nights, noting their positions as they moved across the sky, calculating the center point around which they appeared to rotate. To align a structure with a specific star required observing that star's rising or setting point on the horizon repeatedly, correcting for atmospheric refraction and other factors that could introduce errors. This was not work that could be rushed. It demanded the same commitment to precision that characterized every aspect of pyramid construction. But why such obsession with precision? Why did it matter so much that the pyramids align exactly with the cardinal directions? That the star shafts point precisely at specific constellations? That the arrangement of the three Giza pyramids mirror the pattern of Orion's belt? The answer lies in Egyptian beliefs about the nature of order itself. The universe, in their understanding, was not chaotic or random. It was structured according to divine principles. Everything had its proper place, its correct orientation, its ordained function. To build a pyramid that was not properly aligned was not just to make an error. It was to introduce disorder into creation, to violate divine law, to risk cosmic catastrophe. This belief in cosmic order extended to every aspect of Egyptian culture. Temple walls were covered with scenes, showing the pharaoh performing rituals exactly as prescribed. Religious texts provided precise instructions for funeral ceremonies and offerings. Even daily life was governed by concepts of proper behavior, correct speech, right action. The Egyptian word Ma'at encompasses this entire complex of ideas. Ma'at was truth, justice, order, balance, harmony, all in one. To live according to Ma'at was to align yourself with the fundamental structure of reality. To violate Ma'at was to invite chaos. The pyramids, then, were not just monuments to individual pharaohs. They were expressions of Ma'at itself, order made visible in stone. Their precise alignments demonstrated that the Egyptians understood cosmic patterns and could replicate them on Earth. Their massive scale showed that Egypt had the resources and organization to undertake projects of unprecedented ambition. Their endurance would testify to future generations that the Fourth Dynasty had achieved something eternal, had created structures that would outlast everything temporal and remain as long as the stars themselves. This aspiration to eternity is perhaps the most striking aspect of pyramid construction. The pharaohs knew they would die. Egyptian religion was not unclear on this point. Death was inevitable for everyone, even kings. But death did not have to be the end. Through proper preparation, through the right rituals, through the construction of appropriate monuments, death could be transformed into a gateway to eternal life. The pyramids were essential to this transformation, providing the physical structure that would preserve the body, the architectural form that would guide the soul, the terrestrial anchor for a consciousness ascending to the stars. This belief in life after death was not wishful thinking or comforting fiction to the ancient Egyptians. It was solid fact, as certain as the sunrise, as reliable as the Nile flood. They had evidence, after all. The sun died each evening, sinking below the western horizon, disappearing into the underworld. But it was reborn each morning, rising in the east, renewed and revitalized. The annual plants died each year when the fields dried out, but they were reborn when the floodwaters receded and planting could begin. The moon waxed and waned, dying and being reborn in an endless cycle. Nature itself demonstrated that death was not permanent, that life could return, that resurrection was the fundamental pattern of existence. If the sun could be reborn, if plants could return to life, if the moon could renew itself, then surely the pharaoh, a god in human form, could be resurrected after death. All that was required was proper preparation, correct ritual, and the right architectural framework. The pyramid provided this framework. Its orientation toward the stars created the necessary alignment. Its passages and chambers guided the soul on its journey. Its very form, rising from the earth toward the sky, embodied the ascent from mortality to immortality. The pyramid texts, inscribed on the walls of later pyramids, describe this journey in vivid detail. They speak of the pharaoh awakening in his tomb, rising from his sarcophagus, beginning the ascent to the sky. They describe him as a falcon, soaring upward, as a scarab beetle, associated with the sun and with transformation, as a star, taking his place in the imperishable heavens. The texts provide spells to protect the pharaoh on his journey, to overcome obstacles, to gain admission to the divine realm. One text describes the pharaoh climbing a ladder to heaven. Another speaks of him being ferried across celestial waters in the boat of the sun god Ra. Still others describe him being recognized by the gods, welcomed into their company, given a throne among the stars. These are not random images. They are carefully constructed theological statements about the nature of death, the process of resurrection, and the pharaoh's ultimate destiny among the divine beings who govern the cosmos. The star shafts in the Great Pyramid can be understood as physical embodiments of these textual descriptions. If the texts speak of ascending to the stars, the shafts provide the means of ascent. If the texts describe the pharaoh joining Osiris in Orion, the southern shaft pointing to Orion's belt creates the necessary alignment. The pyramid transforms theological concept into architectural reality, making abstract belief tangible in stone and space. But we must also consider the human cost of these beliefs and the monuments built to serve them. The pyramid projects consumed enormous resources over decades. Thousands of workers labored on them year after year. While recent research suggests these workers were not slaves, that they were paid and housed and even provided medical care, their lives were still dominated by the massive construction projects. Injuries were common. Working conditions were harsh. The heat of the Egyptian sun, the weight of stone blocks, the danger of accidents on massive construction sites, all of these took their toll. Was it worth it? From our modern perspective, spending decades building tombs seems like misallocation of resources that could have gone to improving people's daily lives. But this judgment imposes our values on a culture that had different priorities. Well, the Egyptians believed the pyramids were essential, not luxuries, but necessities. If the pharaoh was not properly buried, if his resurrection failed, then cosmic order would collapse. The sun might not rise, the Nile might not flood. Chaos would overwhelm creation. By this logic, building the pyramids was the most important work anyone could do, more important than any merely practical consideration. Moreover, the pyramid projects provided employment, organization, and meaning. Workers who participated in building a pyramid were contributing to something greater than themselves, ensuring the continuation of cosmic order, serving the gods through their labor. The pride and satisfaction this brought may have outweighed the hardships. We cannot know what was in the hearts of individual workers 4,000 years ago, but we know they built the pyramids, that the projects were completed, that generation after generation contributed to these massive undertakings. The social organization required for pyramid construction was itself remarkable. Someone had to plan the projects, calculate the quantities of stone needed, organize the labor force, arrange for food and water, manage the logistics of transporting blocks from quarries to construction sites. Someone had to train workers in specialized skills like stone cutting, surveying, and moving massive weights. Someone had to maintain quality control, ensuring that blocks were cut to proper dimensions. That alignment remained true, that the structure rose according to plan. This level of organization suggests a sophisticated bureaucracy, a literate administrative class, a system of record-keeping and communication that extended throughout the kingdom. The pyramids are not just architectural achievements, they are administrative achievements, demonstrations that the Egyptian state could mobilize resources on an unprecedented scale and coordinate complex activities over extended periods. The same organizational capacity that built pyramids also maintained irrigation systems, collected taxes, adjudicated disputes, and defended borders. The pyramids are monuments to state power as much as to religious belief. Yet, the religious dimension cannot be separated from the political. The pharaoh's divine status was the foundation of his political authority. If people believed he was a god, if they accepted that his resurrection was essential to cosmic order, then they would contribute to building his pyramid even at personal cost. Religion and politics reinforced each other, creating a system in which massive resources could be mobilized for projects that served both spiritual and temporal power. The alignment of the pyramids with Orion's belt fits perfectly into this system. By mirroring the stars on Earth, the pyramids demonstrated the pharaoh's connection with divine forces. They showed that Egyptian civilization understood cosmic patterns and could replicate them in physical structures. They proved that the pharaohs were not ordinary humans, but beings who participated in the divine realm, who could command the construction of monuments that linked Earth with heaven. This demonstration was important both internally and externally. For Egyptians, it reinforced the legitimacy of pharaonic rule, the belief that the king was truly divine, and that supporting him served cosmic purposes. For foreigners, it displayed Egyptian power and sophistication, demonstrating capabilities that other contemporary civilizations could not match. The pyramids were propaganda as much as they were tombs, making statements about Egyptian power, knowledge, and religious devotion that could be read by anyone with eyes to see. But beyond all these practical and political considerations, there remains something deeply moving about the pyramids and their alignment with the stars. They represent humanity's refusal to accept death as final, our determination to find meaning in the cosmos, our need to believe that our existence matters beyond the brief span of physical life. The ancient Egyptians looked up at the night sky and saw not just points of light, but gods, patterns, pathways to immortality. They brought this vision to earth and stone, creating monuments that would endure as long as the stars they mirrored. Whether we share their beliefs or not, we can recognize the profound human impulse behind them, the desire to transcend mortality, to connect with something eternal, to find our place in the vast cosmos that surrounds us. These are not uniquely Egyptian concerns. They are human concerns, expressed differently in different cultures, but fundamentally universal. The pyramids speak to these concerns in a language of stone and geometry, of astronomical precision and architectural ambition, of human effort directed toward divine purposes. The night sky above Giza looks much the same today as it did 4,000 years ago. Orion still rises in the winter, its belt stars marching across the darkness in their eternal pattern. The circumpolar stars still circle the celestial pole, never setting, truly imperishable. The sun still rises and sets, marking the passage of days and years. The natural rhythms the ancient Egyptians observed continue unchanged, indifferent to human civilizations rising and falling beneath them. But the pyramids remain as well, human creations that have achieved their own form of immortality. Not the literal resurrection their builders hoped for, not the eternal life of the soul among the stars, but something else. Immortality of a different kind. The immortality of achievement so remarkable, it transcends its original context and speaks to all humanity across all time. The immortality of questions raised and mysteries created that continue to engage human imagination. Millennia after the civilization that built them has vanished. We stand in the shadows of these monuments and look up at the stars they align with, and we feel connected across the gap of centuries to the people who built them. We may not believe what they believed, we may understand the cosmos in completely different terms, but we share with them the impulse to look up at the night sky and wonder, to seek patterns and meaning, to hope that somehow our brief existence matters in the vast sweep of cosmic time. The alignment of the pyramids with Orion's belt is a bridge across time, linking ancient astronomers with modern ones, connecting people who saw the stars as gods with people who see them as distant suns. The mathematics of the alignment remains constant. The geometry endures. The correspondence between stone and star persists, independent of the beliefs that created it or the theories that now attempt to explain it. In this persistence, there is a kind of truth that transcends the specific religious beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. The pyramids demonstrate that humans can observe nature carefully, understand patterns, apply knowledge to create enduring works. They show that we can coordinate complex activities, organize societies to achieve ambitious goals, transmit knowledge across generations. They prove that what humans create can outlast individual lives, can survive the collapse of the civilizations that produce them, can continue to inspire and challenge long after their original purposes have been forgotten. The stars will continue their ancient dance. Orion will rise and set with the seasons. The celestial pole will remain fixed as the sky rotates around it. These patterns existed before humans evolved to observe them and will continue long after our species is gone. But for the brief moment of human existence on Earth, we have looked up at these patterns and found meaning, have brought them down to earth in our monuments and myths, have used them to navigate both physical journeys across oceans and spiritual journeys toward understanding. The pyramids at Giza, aligned with Orion's belt, stand as testimony to this human capacity to find meaning in the cosmos and embody it in enduring form. They are monuments to observation and dedication, to belief and achievement, to the eternal human hope that we are part of something larger than ourselves, that our existence connects with patterns that transcend individual life and link us with the eternal rhythms of the universe. The wind blows, sand shifts, time passes, and the pyramids stand, patient beneath the stars, keeping their secrets, maintaining their alignment, continuing to speak in their silent language of stone and geometry to anyone who comes to listen, to look up at the night sky, to wonder about the people who built these monuments and the beliefs that drove them to create something that would endure long after they themselves had turned to dust and their names had been forgotten by all but scholars. This is the story of the pyramids and the stars, not a simple tale of ancient astronomy or religious belief, but a complex narrative about humanity's relationship with the cosmos, about how we seek meaning in patterns, how we use knowledge to create enduring works, how we hope to transcend mortality through what we build and believe. The story is not finished. As long as the pyramids stand and the stars shine, as long as humans look up at the night sky and down at these ancient monuments, the conversation continues. The questions remain alive. The mystery endures. And perhaps this endurance is itself the answer to the question the pyramids pose. Not that we will live forever among the stars as the ancient Egyptians believed, but that what we create, what we achieve, what we contribute to human knowledge and culture can outlast our individual lives and connect us with the great chain of human existence, stretching back through time and forward into an unknown future. The pyramids are not gateways to literal immortality, but they are monuments to the immortality of human achievement, human curiosity, human refusal to accept that death is the final word. The alignment with Orion's belt, whether fully intentional or partly accidental, whether religiously motivated or astronomically precise, stands as evidence that 4,000 years ago, humans looked at the same stars we look at today and found in them meaning, pattern, and hope. They built accordingly, creating monuments that would mirror heaven on earth, that would link the mortal with the eternal, that would testify to future generations that once, long ago, people lived who understood their place in the cosmos and built something worthy of that understanding. The stars remain. The pyramids endure. And the connection between them, forged in stone and stellar alignment 4 millennia ago, continues to speak to us today, reminding us that we are part of something larger than ourselves, that the patterns we observe in nature can be brought to earth through human effort, that what we build with dedication and knowledge can outlast our brief lives and carry our vision forward through the ages. This is the legacy of the pyramids aligned with the stars. Not certainty, but wonder. Not answers, but better questions. Not the literal immortality their builders sought, but the immortality of achievement that transcends its time and speaks to all humanity, across all ages. The shepherd watching stars from the desert 4,000 years ago and the scientists studying stellar alignments today are connected through these monuments, linked by human curiosity and the eternal human desire to understand our place beneath the turning heavens. The story ends where it began, beneath the stars at Giza, with three pyramids mirroring 3 points of light, with ancient aspirations embodied in enduring stone, with questions that may never be fully answered, but will always be worth asking. The pyramids stand, the stars shine, and between them, the connection endures, a bridge across millennia, a testament to human achievement, a monument to the eternal human hope that what we build with care and knowledge will outlast our brief lives and speak our truth long after we are gone.